We are in section 5, the partners and suppliers dimension for the supplier management practice. Now that is interesting, isn't it? For example, it was some other practice such as change enablement, and if it was this dimension, partners and suppliers, we would be learning about what can partners and suppliers contribute to the change enablement practice. But in this case, we're going to understand how can partners and suppliers contribute to the supplier management practice itself. There will be two Bloom's level 2 questions or the understanding questions from this topic in the exam. In particular, we'll take a quick look at the dependencies of the practice on third parties and go in detail as to how those partners and suppliers can support the practice. We would like to say, first of all, that the dependencies on the third-party services themselves become the requirements for sourcing from partners and suppliers. Meaning, for example, an organization might want to outsource the service desk, and therefore they are dependent on the third party for the service desk practice. And that becomes a requirement for the organization that is outsourcing it. And because of that, the organization would have to evaluate their partners and suppliers. They would have to negotiate the contracts. Of course, they create and evaluate all that. They will run through the entire process that we learned earlier in the process dimension, the supplier journey, that is. And once they do that, the requirements become more clear. And as such, overall, the supply management practice is about the evaluation, selection, and sourcing of the suppliers and partners anyway, whenever an organization requires third parties for their services. Therefore, an important thing is that the practice itself cannot be outsourced, meaning the accountability of the practice remains with the organization. It cannot be handed over to the third party, because certain key strategic decisions for outsourcing, etc., will have to remain with the organization. And those decisions cannot be taken by a third party. Even though we have the SIAM, the Supplier Integration and Management, but a decision to bring in SIAM would be done by the organization itself and not given to a supplier integrator or a service integrator. Therefore, there may be some activities of supplier management which can possibly be delegated to third parties. So let's take a look at those now. Here is a table. We have this and another slide coming up to understand what type of activities can be outsourced to third parties by an organization. So first of all, the strategy development for the sourcing can be outsourced to third parties in some way. Meaning here we see that a third party may be allowed to assess the IT organization, review its core competencies, and provide recommendations on optimizing value and cost through a specific sourcing strategy. Meaning an organization may appoint a supplier to give them advice or give them some inputs or information regarding the sourcing strategy or how the sourcing strategy can be developed. However, the conclusion on the sourcing strategy would have to be maintained. The accountability for the sourcing strategy would eventually remain with the organization and not with the third party. All they are doing is they are asking a third party to help them with the strategy development for the sourcing. And that may happen because specific third parties may be excelling or having expertise in creating sourcing strategies. These are usually the consulting companies. The second activity here that we see here is the definition of requirements and drafting of requirements documents. So again, this is whenever an organization would like to understand the detailed requirements for outsourcing, they can bring in a third party to help them with that. So here we see the statement, a third party may act as an agent to collect the requirements and draft the requirements document on behalf of the IT organization. For example, there may be service components and people, processes, tools, and certain products or services to be outsourced. And those detailed requirements may be gathered and documented by engaging a third party who are familiar with those aspects of the service or those areas of the service. Then the third one here is the managing the CM environment, meaning an organization may appoint a supplier to manage the supplier integration environment. So here we see if the sourcing strategy indicates a multi-sourced IT service delivery model, a service integrator may be used to manage multiple suppliers and integrate them to provide a single business-facing delivery environment. So this is more straightforward, meaning an organization may appoint a service integrator to help them manage multiple suppliers. And this is something we looked into a bit more earlier under the key concepts of the practice. Then the next activity wherein a supplier could be engaged is to manage the supplier selection process itself, meaning a third party could act as an agent for the day-to-day operational coordination with potential suppliers and partners participating in the selection process. So, for example, in the document exchanges, the information exchanges, the clarifications, etc., and a supplier may be involved during the supplier selection process. And this is usually, when the process of sending out an RFP and a response to an RFP or some other RFX, all that. Then we have the next item, the supplier and partner response evaluation and selection. And herein, a third party may act as an agent to do the initial evaluation of supplier responses and assist in supplier and partner selection, meaning the third party may help in evaluating the quotations or proposals or demonstrations, information, etc., and provide feedback to the organization, which will help the organization in the final evaluation and decision making. However, the initial evaluation and the providing the information regarding the evaluation of supplier responses can be done by a third party. In the examination, just be a little cautious in terms of what the accountability really is, meaning as we know, accountabilities cannot be handed over to a third party, but the third party may be used to assist in several key areas of the supplier management practice. Then contract drafting and negotiation is another area where a third party could be involved. As you can see here that the third party may act as an agent to assist in drafting the contract as well as assist in contract negotiation. It doesn't mean that they have all the leeway. The third party who have been engaged, they won't have all the leeway to conclude the negotiation, but they will be participating and assisting because they may have negotiation skills, expertise, and that will help the organization in concluding the negotiation in a mutual win-win manner. Then contract and performance audits. Here, a third party may act as an agent to do an independent audit to measure and report on contractual compliance and performance of the contractor, suppliers, and partners. So this is more straightforward. This is wherein the third party is going to perform the complete audit and then measure and report on the compliance and performance of the third suppliers and partners to the organization. And lastly, we have built supplier management automation capabilities, wherein a third party may be used to select, implement, and integrate software tools that will aid monitoring, reporting, and workflow automation of supplier management tasks. So those various automation tools that we considered or looked into under the information and technology dimension for this practice, as third party may be brought in to help with those automation capabilities.